again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of MRN Outloud. Getting set to head to Homestead-Miami Speedway this weekend, where for the first time since all the postponements began, fans will be back in the stands this weekend. We've got a big show on tap for you. First up, Brad Keselowski, the former champ, is off to a hot start this season. We'll talk about how he's gotten to that point and what he thinks about the way things have gone so far this season. Then a little bit later on, Rodney Childers will be along. He's the crew chief, of course, for Kevin Harvick. They are off to a very hot start as well. He'll talk about what's coming ahead at Homestead-Miami Speedway as well. It's all ahead on this edition of MRN Out Loud. Stay with us.
Citywide to countryside. Whatever you drive, wherever you go, Hercules Tires has the value, selection, and industry-leading warranty to get you there, no matter where the road takes you. Go to HerculesTire.com. There you can find the nearest authorized Hercules retail location to you. Plus, you can use the tire tracker to find out which Hercules tire fits your vehicle the best. That's HerculesTire.com. Hercules Tires. Ride on our strength.
Well, Brad, you're off to a red-hot start this season, especially since the return to racing after the postponements. But you and crew chief Jeremy Bullins have a history together. You won more than a dozen Xfinity races, so it's not like you're starting from scratch. But is this as simple as the crew chief swap at Team Penske worked, or is it deeper than that?
Well, I think it's good for everybody so far, and it's mixed things up a little bit, challenged every one of us to think a little differently and expand our horizons. And it's not always a bad thing. I think there were good combinations before, but I think with time that sometimes we all get a little bit too comfortable, myself included. And like I said, this pushes us to think differently, and you get sometimes better results that way.
One of the big wins, obviously, the Coca-Cola 600, one that's been on your bucket list for quite some time, not the least of which is because of its association with Memorial Day. And you were honoring the Staff Sergeant Donovan Reap on the car that day, and I saw the video that his family posted where his mom said, "We don't want to just be thought of as mourning our son. We want people to know that he lived." And it seems like that might be a good motto for your Checkered Flag Foundation, and it just seems like that whole thing resonated with you so deeply. Is that true?
Well, Memorial Day weekend is certainly a special weekend to me, and that my family and some friends have served, and my foundation does a lot to help them, along with first responders, and so that Memorial Day is it's a holiday weekend, but it's as much a celebration as a chance to reflect and look at the privileges that we have and what made them possible, and certainly the sacrifices of many people over many years, and have done just that to create this country and this place we live in. But Donovan is one of a long list who gave his life for his country, and I can't imagine what that's like as his mom or dad or sister or friends to be a part of, and we're just glad we got to honor him in some small way. So just like his mom said, people knew that he lived.
Did I see correctly that your foundation was helping in one of the Fisher House units that opened in Ann Arbor this week? That seemed like it was the perfect timing for all this that was going on.
Yeah, we have a number of initiatives, and so many, sometimes I can't keep track of them all, but the Fisher House in Ann Arbor, Michigan is this very special one to me because it's in my home state. It just didn't even seem real that they didn't have a Fisher House. Fisher House is so important for those who are going through medical treatments and their families to be able to be together and to have a place to reside, and in times of extreme duress, and for the state of Michigan to not have one just kind of blew my mind. But no, we're glad to support it, glad to see it's going through the opening phases here in these months, and I hope I'll be able to get up there. That was my original intent. And with a pandemic and everything, that wasn't possible, but I hope we can get up there and be a part of it.
I think we've all been impressed so far with the planning and the effort and the execution from NASCAR to get us back on track again, and all they had to go through and how much hard work and planning was involved with that. But it does seem as well like there are some things that may have been kind of on the drawing board or on the back burner that have been very popular and might be longer lasting, like some of the midweek shorter races, the lack of practice. For example, this time, Martinsville under the lights midweek. What kinds of things have jumped out to you so far about this?
Well, those are three that I really like, but I would probably add a fourth one to it. I really like the no qualifying top 20 invert. I think that's been a lot of fun. It kind of puts qualifying in the place of, hey, was this really super important? Not necessarily, but also mixes up the field in a sense to where, I think you see some really good cars have to drive through the field and put on some great races. And I think that's always good for the fans.
That being said, tell the truth now. Any butterflies with no practice, no qualifying the first time you stormed off into turn one at Darlington when we came back after 2 months off?
I would say it's every week. You're just thinking to yourself, I have a chance to warm this car up or do anything. I hope everything's right on it. I hope something doesn't come falling out of it. And our team's done a great job of that, and I'm really proud of it. But I think you've seen some other issues that other teams have had. And those are the things that you kind of worry about.
Speaking of planning, we don't know a whole lot about next year's schedule yet, but we did find out this week that NASCAR is going to go back to Nashville, not the fairgrounds like so many people had hoped, but the super speedway. Tell me why that's nostalgic for you.
Well, yeah, I've won there twice, and I've got 2 really cool guitars hanging up in my office in Statesville, and I hope I can add some more. I hope that's the new trophy for the Cup race. I don't know what their plans are, but that was a super cool trophy, one that I took a lot of pride in winning. And that track is certainly unique. There's no track like it, and I appreciate all the efforts that came together to make it possible.
Let's move away from the track a little bit. You're a champion, of course, but now you're also a 2-time dad. I saw where Scarlett just turned 5, and now Autumn is hitting 6 months. So tell me what you have learned from Scarlett that will help you with Autumn.
Well, I've learned to be really careful when brushing your hair because it falls out a lot easier once you have 2 girls. I'll tell you that. No, just kidding. I think, it's really quite remarkable being a dad, being a girl dad and coming home, especially after you win a race and getting that hug. It means the world. And there's all kinds of things that you're always learning. Kids teach you so much. They teach you as much about yourself as they do about themselves. And it's an overwhelmingly positive experience for anyone to go through, and I'm enjoying every second of it.
I know she's still really young, but are you starting to see some flashes of what Autumn's personality is going to be like compared to Scarlett yet?
Yeah, I mean, both of them are a lot like their mom. So,
you mean the 22-year-old?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But, she's so my daughter thinks my wife is 22 years old, which Paige is not complaining about one bit, but no, there's a lot of personality similarities, very creative and artistic, which I'm not at all. Very sassy, which, okay, maybe sometimes I've got a little flavor to me, but all their mom.
Brad, I saw also on social media this week where you were commenting on Bob and Doug. That just kills me to say Bob and Doug the astronauts. It makes me think of Bob and Doug McKenzie. But where their seatbelts had some racing elements involved to them, and you mentioned how fascinated you are by space, not social distancing, but what surrounds the Earth. I'm curious as to whether any of that kind of helped lead you to where you have gotten with Keselowski Advanced Manufacturing and what you're doing with 3D printing. I mean, that seems straight out of the Jetsons to me.
Yeah, well, space is, the forefront of technology, especially here in the United States. I think every country has their own sector which drives technology. In the United States, it's heads and tails space, whether it's, advanced manufacturing techniques like metal 3D printing or advanced, digital techniques like simulation. Or multi-body physics simulation. I think you see space driving those things more than anything else. Not that it's not in other sectors of business, it clearly is, but not at the level it is in space. And so I'm fascinated by technology, and space is, like I said, it sets the tone here in the United States. Every country is a little different, but in the United States, it's clearly space. And I like to see those things and know where our country's going and know where our world's going.
Your project with Keselowski Advanced Manufacturing, I was there for the opening of it, and it's been about a year and a half now. I saw where you guys are working in a variety of different areas. And at the time, I was struck by you saying it was the 4th industrial revolution, or part of that. What did you mean by that?
Well, Industry 4.0 is, a simple way of explaining a very complex system designed to revolutionize manufacturing and the world we live in, I think it's pretty easy for most people that know history to think of the first industrial revolution of simple things like the train or the cotton gin or power plants, things of that nature, into the second industrial revolution with, mass production like Henry Ford and the automobile, and the ability for mass transportation in multiple ways, whether it be the airplane or the car. And then I think you look at the third one, which is, the forefront of the digital age that we now live in, whether it's iPhones or, any kind of computer controlled machine. And I think you look at the fourth one, which is really the ability to connect that entire digital thread with, extremely fast processing speed into manufacturing, and creating products without prototypes, because you have tools like simulation, or connecting factories to quickly find inefficiencies through big data. These are, things that are affecting our lives in a lot of different ways. Machine learning is one of them. So, I think we're just starting to really experience that. I think without Industry 4.0, we would not have seen, SpaceX be successful with their mission to go back into space. And I think we wouldn't see a lot of the advancements that we maybe sometimes take for granted that have come over the last 5 to 10 years. So I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg with lots more to come.
Recently, you tweeted about the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis and said that you were hopeful that justice would prevail and the riots would stop. A lot of the drivers have been debating or discussing this issue as well. How can we do that? How do you think we can finally all come together? Because it sometimes seems like we're only getting further apart, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, that's probably a $1 trillion question that, centuries of people have tried to figure out. And as you can tell, unsuccessfully. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I have the perfect answer to it. I think that probably the first thing that stands out is to do no harm. And that's kind of the medical rule, right? If you're a doctor, that's the first thing they teach you. If you can't help, don't make it worse. And I know from my perspective that, my goal personally is just to not make it worse, to not dig a hole and fan the flames. And I think that's where you start. As to where you end, I don't know if I have that answer. But I do know that the justice system plays an important role in it, and making sure that, we have an equal set of rules and laws for everybody that are enforced in such a manner. And I think sometimes that's not always the case.
Absolutely. Well, let's finish with this, Brad. You said a while back that you plan on racing for several more years, maybe a decade or so. You're in a streak right now of 5 straight seasons with multiple wins. So any updates on your contract situation? What's your goal going forward?
Yeah, I think, the simple answer is my goal is to be in a spot where I can win races and championships, like I have been for, a number of years. I'm very proud of what we've been able to do to win 32 races at the Cup level. It's not come easy, but it still has come, and it's come through having great people around me, and I hope to keep those great people around me. It's not, all in my control, and I guess we'll see how it plays out, but, I don't really have anything new to share.
All right, Brad. Well, we appreciate your time, and good luck. Congratulations on the strong start to the season.
Thanks, Woody. Appreciate you.
Always great to chat with the former champ, Brad Keselowski. Before we move on, we want to remind you that we'd like to see what you're doing while the races are on. Are you grilling out? Do you have a big man cave set up? You have some other kind of situation where folks are coming over and watching the races with you? Show us what you're doing. Use the hashtag NASCAR Tailgate and hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at MRN Radio. And what you're doing might appear in one of our shows coming right up. When we return, Rodney Childers will join us from Stewart-Haas Racing.
Sir, are you aware you were going 40 miles an hour? This is a residential area.
Sure, but I'm on my lawnmower? Wait, am I getting a ticket?
No, I've just never seen anyone top 9 miles an hour on one of those bad boys. And mow their entire lawn in 30 seconds? What got into you?
Well, it did fuel up at Sunoco this morning.
At Sunoco, we know how to fuel peak performance. We've been doing it for American racing for over 50 years. Fuel your best.
Rodney Childers is with us now, fresh off the win from he and Kevin Harvick at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Rodney, first of all, congratulations there. I know that had a lot of emotional meaning for you and the team. and Kevin showing the 3 as he did his victory lap there had to be special to everybody. Only thing that would have made it better is if there had been some fans in the stands to help him celebrate it, I guess, huh?
Yeah, for sure. Atlanta's been a great place for him and for the 4 team, to be honest. To get his first win there and to get his 51st win there is pretty incredible. I can remember when we went to Victory Lane there a couple of years ago. He said, "Can you believe this is my 40th?" And so to be 51st now is pretty cool. But it's just been a great place for us. We've been able to just be fast every year down there and have great race cars, and obviously he does a good job for us.
A lot of guys try to copy what he does at Atlanta, but few have been as successful as him. But Rodney, you guys are leading the standings. Since we came back, since things got rolling again after the stay-at-home orders for everyone, what's jumped out at you about this part of the season?
Well, I think the biggest thing is just racing at places, a different time of the year than what you normally would. To go to Atlanta and race during the day in June, something that we never even thought about doing. So, it was a warm day. I think we're probably pretty lucky it wasn't any worse than what it was. But a lot of these tracks are just, different time of year and a little bit different setup at different, to get around there. And, the biggest thing is just focusing on what you need to focus on, and unloading good and making sure you have some adjustability in the car and the race.
That brings up an interesting point. You mentioned going to different tracks at different times of year than you're used to. How, obsolete does that make your notebook? Are some things still valid, or is it just like starting from scratch almost?
Yeah, some things are still valid. You use everything that you can. It doesn't matter if it's from 8 years ago or if it was from last year. I seem to go back, as far back as I can go. With our history with Kevin, I try to look at every year and what were the things that worked and what were the things that didn't work. And, even though the package has changed, the rules have changed a little bit, you still have those trends of things that he liked and that you kind of got to have in your head before the weekend starts. So, it is a little bit tough. The biggest thing is just saying, where do we need to be on the balance on your dynamic wedge? When you unload, do we need to be looser or tighter than what we were there last time, with it being a different time of the year and different time of the day and all those things. So, it's a little tough, but it brings out the best in everybody, and we've got a great group that works on that stuff and works really hard at it.
Rodney, you'll head to Homestead-Miami Speedway, and that was one that was right on the verge of happening before everything got postponed. You'll be going back there at a different time of year, but you already knew that. This will still be in the heat of the summer in Miami. What are you looking for when you go down to Homestead?
Yeah, I think March may have been a little bit better than June, though. It's going to be warm, and it's going to be hot and humid, and racing during the day instead of at night. We've always raced into the night there, racing for the championship, and it's been a good place for us. Obviously, we've been able to run right there for the lead about every year, racing for a championship, but we haven't had just that dominant car at that particular track. We haven't been down there and just lead every lap and everybody trying to catch up. It's always been us trying to get a little bit better each pit stop. So we want to be better. Maybe racing during the day may help us out compared to some other guys. I'm not sure, but we feel like we're prepared. We feel like we're taking a good car, and hopefully we'll go down there and have a good run.
Let's finish with this, Rodney. There's been a lot of things that have kind of been on the drawing board for NASCAR over the last few years that this pandemic has maybe pushed them to try a little bit earlier than they may have otherwise. The things like no practice, no qualifying, some midweek races, shorter races, that kind of thing. Do you think some of this stuff is going to stick after we get through all this, or is it just going to be a kind of a weed things out and some things will survive and some things won't make the cut when we go forward?
Well, I think we've all learned a lot. We've learned a lot as a race team. We've learned a lot as competitors in the garage. NASCAR has learned a lot. Their officials have learned a lot. It's a huge huge difference for all of us. And there's probably some things right now that we all like. There's probably some things that we don't like. And then you got, every team's different. A guy that's trying to get a little bit better each week that needs to get a better relationship going with the driver crew chief thing, or a rookie like Cole that needs more laps. Every team needs something different. So I can't sit here and say, the 4 team's selfish and we want to do it this way, but you kind of got to do what's right for everybody. And, we've kind of learned that the races don't need to be as long. We don't need as much practice, and you don't have to qualify all the time. And, and we probably don't need to be at the racetrack for 3.5 days or whatever. And so, all that stuff is going to be a learning curve for all of us, as the world changes and sponsorship gets harder and harder to come across. All of us are going to have to change and be open for change. So, I think we've learned a ton, and it'll be interesting to see where all of it goes for sure.
Absolutely, it will. Being able to adapt is key. Well, Rodney, congratulations on the strong start to the season and the win at Atlanta, and look forward to catching up with you at both Martinsville and Homestead. Continued success.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
There you go. Rodney Childers, the crew chief for Kevin Harvick and the number 4 car from Stewart-Haas Racing. That's all the time we've got for this edition of MRN Out Loud. We'd like to thank Brad Keselowski and Rodney Childers for joining us on this week's show. Don't forget, hashtag NASCAR Tailgate. Show us what you're doing during the races, and yours might appear in one of our programs coming up. Use the hashtag NASCAR Tailgate, of course, and hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at MRN Radio. I'm Woody Cain, and we'll see you right back here again next week for another edition of MRN Out Loud.